In today's video, we shall be going through one of the most important games of the year 2024. The game which I am going to present is between Domraju Gukesh, who is currently the world champion, and Fabiano Caruana, who has been world number 2 for a long time. He was challenger to Magnus Carlsen, where he managed to draw the classical games against Carlsen. He's an incredibly strong opponent. This game was played in Chess Olympiad, where Gukesh was representing India and Caruana was representing USA. By winning this game, Gukesh ensured that India won the gold medal in Chess Olympiad, and also Gukesh showed to the world that he is a worthy contender to the world championship crown, which he later managed to win against Ding Liren. So in this game, Gukesh was white. He started with d4. Black, Caruana played knight f6. Gukesh played c4. Black played e6. White, Gukesh played g3, which is the Catalan opening. Here, for those who have not heard about the Catalan opening, the main idea behind Catalan opening obviously is to put the bishop on g2 and pressurize Black's queen side. The usual move used to be knight c3 with the idea of advancing e4, after which Black can either play d5, which is the queen's gambit declined, or he can play bishop b4, pinning this knight, preventing white from playing e4. This is the Nimzo Indian defense, which has a very good reputation with Black. So many white players, they avoid exchanging the c3 knight or getting this knight pinned, and they start with the move knight f3 first. But the move knight f3 does not threaten e4. It doesn't support e4. So Black, apart from playing d5, the queen's gambit, or bishop b4 check, which is the Bogo Indian defense, Black usually plays b6, which is the queen's Indian defense. Here, Black's bishop would go to b7 and would typically be on a good diagonal, controlling the e4 square. And again here, Black has a very decent game. So to avoid all these possibilities, White plays the Catalan opening. Here he has avoided the knight pin after knight c3, bishop b4, and he has also tactfully avoided the queen's Indian defense by Black, because if Black plays b6 now, White can go bishop g2 attacking the rook, followed by e4, because the g2 bishop supports the e4 pawn. So that is how White will be able to occupy the center. So this is the basic idea behind the Catalan opening. Black played d5, which is the most common response, and White played bishop g2. Here, Black has a lot of different possibilities, but all those possibilities can be divided into two groups. Either Black takes this pawn, or he solidifies the center. He solidifies the center in order to basically block the g2 bishop. So either he puts his pawn on c6, or he takes this pawn and puts pressure along the d file. Here, Caruana chose an option which is slightly less common. Probably he wanted to take Gukesh out of theory, and he played the move knight c6, which looks slightly odd at first sight. Generally, in queen's pawn openings, we are advised not to block our c-pawns because the c-file belongs to the rooks. But here, by playing knight c6, he is blocking the c6 pawn. But Black does have an idea. He is improving his position so that he can play dc at the right moment. And after playing dc, he would basically put pressure on the d4 pawn, and also in some special situations he can play e5, opening the diagonal for this bishop. So this is how Black is intending after knight c6. White played knight f3, and in this position black played another highly surprising move, an unusual move, that is rook to b8. This looks like a mysterious move, but actually this has an idea. Basically, black is inviting white to exchange the d pawn. Black is communicating, or black wants to say that if you do not take c d5, I will be taking dc in the next move, and after which I'll be playing b5. The rook on b8 basically supports the pawn advance b5, and by playing b5 the bishop would come to b7 on a good diagonal, and black would be a pawn up. All his pieces would be decently placed. The rook on b8 has, after b5, it has moved away from bishop's diagonal. So this is black's idea behind dc and rook b8. So, well, here after rook b8, white did take c d5. He prevented black's idea, and basically white is trying to convey that, well, after ed, the rook on b8 is uselessly placed in this type of pawn structure. The rook belongs to e8 or d8. But black is arguing that by playing rook b8, I have forced you to exchange in the center so that my bishop can develop through this diagonal. So both the players have their points, and in the game black actually played bishop b4 check first, white developed knight c3, and then black took ed5. White played bishop g5. This is a very interesting move because castles is the normal move here, but since black is placing his pieces, he has placed his bishop on b4, the knight on f6, the knight can jump to e4, and basically black would control the e4 square, which is a strong outpost. So white, before playing his natural move castling, he first pinned the knight, and he wants to remove the knight because he doesn't want the knight to come to e4. Black played h6, and white exchanged this knight for his bishop. So now black can claim that he has a dark square bishop, or he has the double bishop advantage, but white will claim that he has pressure upon black's position. So after castles, white is actually threatening to capture the d pawn because the knight is unpinned. What would black do? Black can either take this knight, or he can defend the d5 pawn. If he plays bishop e6, white would play queen b3, reinforcing the threat on d5, and there is no easy way for black to defend the d5 pawn. For example, if he plays queen d8 here, white can bring his rook to d1, he can follow it up with knight e5, and he can increase his pressure upon d5. And if black captures on c3 now, white can take back with the queen, not the pawn. This way the c file is left open for white's pieces, and now we realize that black's rook on b8 is not ideally placed. The rook on c file is much more active than black's rook. So here white would have a good advantage. That is why after bishop g5, h6, bf6, queen f6, when white castled, black did not support the pawn, rather he exchanged this knight immediately, blocking white's c file. Well, here black castled, and this is a standard position which has arisen from this opening. Both the players would be reasonably satisfied with their opening moves. It is white to play. You may pause the video here and guess what white should plan from this position. Okay, Gukesh played knight to d2. This is a very nice move because white is threatening, or he has the idea to advance both the e pawn or c pawn. This way white not only increases pressure upon the d5 pawn, he opens the diagonal for his bishop and he lays the foundation for a future pawn break in the center. Black played knight to e7, defending the e pawn and probably planning to go c6, neutralizing the bishop on g2. Okay, here white should have continued with the original idea of e4, advancing the pawn. After the probable exchange of d and e pawn, white will have a very active knight on e4. The knight can actually jump to c5 in future, and this queen could join the queenside attack by going queen a4. Together, combined with the bishop on g2, the rook on b1, white would have a very pleasant pressure on the queen side. So this position should be advantageous to white. But instead, Gukesh chose a more restrained move, that is e3. Okay, although this is not the best move, e4 was the best move in this position, but psychologically this move did have an impact. Gukesh sent a signal that he wants to play a restrained game. He doesn't want to liquidate. He wants to keep pressure for a longer time. Here black played bishop e6, developing and overprotecting d5. White played queen a4, attacking the a7 pawn. In this position, it is black to play, and your turn to pause the video and guess black's next move. Well, from this position onwards, black played a couple of slightly inferior moves and handed over the advantage to white. Caruana, one of the best players of the world, he played a6, which is the most natural defensive move. He defended the a pawn, but he should have played knight to c8. Well, he could have played moves like c6, neutralizing the g2 bishop, and he could have followed it up with moves like, say, b5. The knight could have been brought to a better post, that is d6, from where it could jump to c4, it would control e4, and black would have some counterplay in return for white's queenside pressure. So knight c8 was the move which should have been played, but Caruana played a simpler move, which is a6. Now after a6, white went for e4. So he had played e3 earlier, but now he played e4. And in this position, Caruana went for c5, which is an active move, an interesting move, but probably he should have taken, it was better to take in the center, after which the queen would move to g6, and black could defend the queen side, although white has some pressure. But instead he went for the more interesting move c5, which was again a slight inaccuracy. And over here, Gukesh started putting pressure. He played a very nice and cunning move, that is queen to a3. He is attacking the c5 pawn with his queen, and the idea is, well, there's a very nice trap with this move. If black takes cd, which seems very natural, white will play a brilliant move, that is e5. This queen on f6 is overloaded. It has the task of defending e7 knight. It cannot capture the pawn because the e7 knight would be captured. And if black feels that he can capture a couple of pawns and have compensation for the knight would come to f3, and this knight is certainly better than black's pawns because it will go to d4. The pawns would be vulnerable. So in this position, after e5, black well, would play something like queen g5, and white can go knight f3, attacking the queen. The queen cannot defend the e7 knight anymore. So this was a very cunning trap by Gukesh. He played queen a3, and since black cannot take on d4, he played b6. Well, in this position, white has many alternatives. Some of the moves look very obvious, but they don't work. White can actually capture on a6. White can consider capturing on c5, but white played a very restrained move once again, that is rook a b1. So let's see what would happen if black captured on a6. If black would simply take on d4, and black would have sufficient counterplay. Now the queen is no more attacking e7, so we don't have moves like e5 anymore. Okay, so here instead, if white captured on c5, this looks like a very natural move, but then black would take back the pawn, and if white captures this pawn, white is a pawn up, but black would simply go rook c8, and in these type of endgames, after queen d4, queen exchange, black's rooks are very active, and he has compensation for the pawn. He is one pawn down, but all his pieces are superbly active, and he can, well, the bishop's diagonal is open, the d5 square is available for the knight, and he has very good play for the pawn. So the move dc5 is possible, but black is happy to give up his pawn and get good counterplay. So white played rook a b1, a restrained move, and black played rook f e8, supporting this knight so that the queen can be free. Now black is threatening to take cd and take this with his queen. White played dc. Well, white could have played e5, he could have advanced his pawn majority on the king side, but instead he opted for the move dc. Well, another very important position. From this point onwards, Caruana started fighting back. Instead of taking back this pawn with moves like bc, here white can take the pawn, but then black would simply attack the queen would move back, and in the end game, after the queens are exchanged, black could take de, knight e4, rook e d8. This is a very important move because white is threatening knight d6, forking both the rooks. So black would move away from the fork and counter attack the d4 pawn. He's still a pawn down, but black is attacking the d4 pawn, black is attacking the a2 pawn, and once again he has a fantastic outpost for his knight on d5. This is equal position. Well, against a move like knight c5, black can simply take bishop a2, and the game is equal. So, well, bc5 is possible. White cannot play queen c5 because the game would be equal, but white does have a very nice sequence. He can first exchange the rooks, and then he can play a move like a simple improving move like rook to e1. Now in this position, white is threatening the c5 pawn, and if black defends rook c8, well, this is a very important or interesting position. Although material is equal, all black's pieces are placed defensively. The knight on e7 and bishop on e6 are protecting the d5 pawn. The rook on c8 is protecting the c5 pawn. So black is tied down, and anytime he takes de4, white's knight would jump to e4 and white would have initiative. So in this position, white has advantage. Okay, so that is why Caruana played a fantastic move. That is, after dc, he did not take bc, rather he played d4. He sacrificed his c pawn temporarily and he created counterplay. The point behind d4 is that if white takes on d4, black would take back with the queen. He is a pawn down, but is attacking the knight. He is also attacking the c5 pawn. So he would recover the pawn and the game would be equal. So d4 is a move which aims for counterplay, and white played c4. He would not allow the queen to come to d4, and well, by playing c4, white has conceded or given black a dangerous d pawn, which is a passed pawn. But instead white is still a pawn up, and the d2 knight is a very good defensive piece. Here black played queen g5, a fantastic move, attacking the knight, attacking the pawn. It's a double attack. And black played rook d1, defending the knight. White played rook d1, defending the knight. Black took the c5 pawn, white played f4. Now this c5 pawn is defended by the queen. So white plays a sequence by which he first attacked the queen went to h5, keeping defense on the c5 pawn, and now white played f5, cutting the line of the queen and attacking the e6 bishop. Now this is a move which seemingly it gives white a winning position, because if the bishop moves, white is winning a couple of pawns. But around this position, Caruana, he played very nice moves. First he exchanged the rooks. Of course white cannot take back with the knight because the d1 rook is hanging, so he has to take back with the rook, and then he went queen e2. He counter-attacked white's knight. Well, instead of going for passive defense, black is counter-attacking, and white took the bishop, black took this knight, white took the pawn again. ef7, king f7, queen c5, white is a pawn up, but black does have compensation in form of dangerous d pawn. So if black can manage to advance the pawn, it will be very dangerous. But before doing that, black played a couple of very nice moves. That is, he moved his queen away from possible attacks by white's pieces. He played king g8, rook f1, king h7. So this is something we have to remember. Before carrying on with active operations, we have to first secure our own position. Black did exactly that. The king is quite safe on h7. So it seems Caruana is doing good, and he is on his way to at least getting a draw from Gukesh. Gukesh is a pawn up. He played queen e5. He centralized his queen, and black played queen e3 check, king h1. He advanced his pawn d3. So black is moving ahead with his pawn. In the next couple of moves, white placed his bishop from g2 to a very active diagonal. That is, he played bishop h3. The bishop is ready to join the attack, but after d2 it went to g4. The bishop from g4 defends as well as attacks. So this is an excellent maneuver by Gukesh. And black in this position, well, from this position onwards, black made a couple of inaccuracies and once again landed up in trouble. So initially it was Gukesh who was holding advantage. Then Caruana fought back. He got a very nice position, a pawn down. But then from this point onwards, he played queen d3, double attacking. He's attacking the rook, he's attacking the c4 pawn. But a better try would have been to go rook d8 with the idea this is a piece sacrifice by black. If white captures the knight, black could actually promote queen. And when white captures the queen, black would exchange the rooks. Black is a piece down. Here he can recover the piece by playing queen e1 check, but after king g2, queen d1, black is threatening to get this pawn by playing queen e2, but white can still play queen f7 after queen e2 check, king h3. Well, white has the dangerous e pawn, so when black captures this e pawn, white can put his queen on d5, and he is a pawn up in queen endgame. The queen is centralized. Well, this is the secret of queen endgames. Whenever you have queen and pawns, try to centralize your queen. You will have a great position. And with this passed pawn, white is about to win. Well, unfortunately for white, after bishop d1, black has a better defense. Instead of queen e1 check and taking back bishop immediately, he has a very nice move, that is queen f2, threatening checkmate in one move. So although white is a piece up, he cannot defend against this check easily. He has to go for a move like say h4, and black can keep on checking white. So he can keep on checking white. If the king tries to escape from g4, he will capture d1 with a check, and white's king is sufficiently exposed for black to get a draw. So this is how black could have drawn, by playing rook d8 and sacrificing a knight in this position. Instead, he went for double attack. White played king g2 defending the rook. He took back the pawn. White played a4 defending his a pawn, and black in the next couple of moves makes an inaccuracy. He plays queen c6. White played queen d4, and black went queen g6. This was the blunder by black. He should have played knight g6 with the intention of placing the knight on e5. After queen d2, well, white is a solid pawn up, but after knight e5, this knight securely blockades this pawn, and it's very difficult for black to lose from here. So this is a typical position where a knight, a centralized knight which blocks the pawn, can defend all the vulnerable squares. So this is how black should have played, but instead of knight g6, he went for queen g6. And now Gukesh played a very simple move. He played rook f4, defending the rook, overprotecting the e pawn. And well, this is a type of position where once again black is tied down. If the knight moves, white has a very simple move, bishop f5, pinning the queen. And in this position, well, black doesn't have many important moves left. He played if he goes queen c6, if he moves his queen away from g6, white would go rook f7, threatening checkmate, and if the queen comes back, well, this is just to illustrate white's idea. White can go bishop h5, removing the queen is once again overloaded. It has to defend g7. It cannot capture on h5. And this is how white can continue his attack. So in this position, black played queen g5 instead of queen c6, and white went h4. He makes way for the king, and of course at present is attacking the queen. The queen doesn't have many good squares, so he went back and black captured the d pawn. White captured the d pawn. Gukesh is once again a pawn up, but more importantly, black's king is exposed because of the threat bishop f5. The knight cannot move from e7. Black played rook b8. White went queen d7, attacking the knight. The knight can't move because of bishop f5. Well, and against any rook b2 type moves, white has a secure square for his king on h3. So here black went h5 in desperation. White went bishop e6. he still has the move king h3 against rook b2 checks. Black went rook b6. White played bishop f7 attacking the queen. He's a pawn up. Black offered to exchange the queens. White accepted the offer. He exchanged the queens and captured the second pawn. So he is 2 pawns up. Now black played knight c6. White went bishop e2. Black played a5. White went bishop b5. White wants to activate his pieces, exchange pieces. He is 2 pawns up. The endgame should be winning. Black played ne5. White went rook f5 attacking the blockader knight. He defended the knight, and white played king f2, which is the last move of the game. White threatens to invade through d5, attacking, removing the blockade of the e-pawn, and in this hopeless position, 2 pawns down, black decided to resign. So with this win, India managed to win the Chess Olympiad by defeating the top seed USA. Well, another very important win for Gukesh was his win against Yu Yangyi of China, because China was another rival of Indian team, with USA and China defeated, and in both the matches it was Gukesh who was the hero. He defeated his opponents on top board. So in this way, India managed to win gold medal in Chess Olympiad. In men's section, in women's section also India played very well, and India has a great year 2024. Gukesh had won candidates. He won the World Championship. Koneru Hampi won the World Rapid Championship, and I don't think it would be possible for any country to emulate the feat of India. So yeah, that is what we saw in this particular video. The way Gukesh played against Caruana, he defeated him with effortless ease, and this shows the level of play the Indian players have currently. So thanks for watching. We shall be back in 2025 with the game of the week. Keep watching our channel. Goodbye.